When we talk about moments that capture both drama and surprise, few situations stand out more than when authority and defiance collide in a public space. The airport, a place usually associated with routine travel, became the stage for an unexpected showdown between Judge Holloway and Crockett. This wasn't just about a delayed journey or a simple disagreement, it turned into a defining encounter where power, determination, and resilience were tested right in front of everyone. The incident raised eyebrows, sparked conversations, and left people wondering about the deeper motives behind Judge Holloway's actions and Crockett's bold response. The unexpected confrontation between Judge Holloway and Crockett at the airport became one of those rare incidents where an ordinary day turned into a spectacle that captured everyone's attention. Airports are usually seen as transitional spaces, filled with the hustle of travelers rushing to catch flights, families saying emotional goodbyes, and officials maintaining order in the midst of constant movement. Yet, within this environment, a dramatic and highly unusual encounter unfolded when Judge Holloway, a figure known for authority and discipline, decided to intervene and stop Crockett. The very idea that a respected judge would step out of the courtroom and into the bustling corridors of an airport to directly confront someone was startling. It immediately raised questions about what prompted such bold action, what personal or professional motives might have driven Holloway, and why Crockett seemed to be the person at the center of it all. For bystanders, the sight of a judge using authority outside of the formal setting of a court was already enough to stir curiosity, but combined with Crockett's reputation for being fearless and outspoken, the situation escalated quickly into something much larger than a chance encounter. The confrontation carried with it layers of tension that went far beyond a simple disagreement. Judge Holloway, with years of experience commanding respect within the legal system, was not someone used to being questioned or challenged. In that moment at the airport, however, Holloway was stepping into unfamiliar territory where authority was not automatically recognized by everyone present. Crockett, on the other hand, was no stranger to conflict, and the decision to stand firm rather than yield only heightened the drama. Observers noticed the sharp exchange of words, the body language that showed resistance and determination, and the sheer willpower displayed by both sides as neither seemed willing to back down. This made the scene unfold like a standoff, not in a courtroom, but in the middle of a public space where travelers with luggage and boarding passes became an unintended audience to a power struggle. People paused, some recorded on their phones, and whispers began circulating almost instantly as the tension grew more visible by the minute. What made the confrontation so compelling was the clash of personalities and positions. Judge Holloway represented the embodiment of institutional power, the kind that carries weight because of decades of law, order, and precedent. Crockett, by contrast, symbolized resistance, courage, and the refusal to be intimidated even by figures of authority. When these two opposing forces collided at the airport, it highlighted something far more significant than the immediate conflict. It raised discussions about the boundaries of authority, about when power extends beyond its rightful space, and about the importance of individuals who are willing to challenge figures who overstep. Holloway's attempt to stop Crockett was not simply seen as a single action, it became a moment that reflected broader questions of justice, freedom, and the balance between official authority and personal rights. The more the scene unfolded, the more it seemed to echo larger societal struggles where people often find themselves caught between established systems and their own determination to stand tall. The reactions from those present only added fuel to the unfolding drama. Some onlookers sided with Holloway, perhaps out of respect for the position a judge holds or a belief that order must always be maintained, even outside the courtroom. Others, however, were quick to admire Crockett's refusal to bow down, interpreting it as an act of courage and independence. In the age of instant communication, snippets of the confrontation quickly began spreading beyond the airport walls. Videos, descriptions, and speculations circulated online, amplifying the event into something much bigger. What began as a moment witnessed by a handful of people soon became a subject of public debate, with commentators analyzing every gesture and statement, trying to piece together the deeper meaning behind Holloway's decision to act and Crockett's choice to resist. At the heart of this confrontation was also the unpredictability of human behavior under pressure. Judge Holloway may have entered the airport with a clear purpose, a determination to halt Crockett for reasons only fully known to those directly involved. Yet once the moment unfolded in front of an audience, the dynamics shifted. Authority in private is one thing, but authority displayed publicly and tested by resistance becomes something altogether different. Crockett's stance made it clear that compliance was not an option, and in that refusal, the situation transformed from a judge's command into a struggle for narrative control. Who was truly in charge in that moment? Was it the figure of legal power, or the individual standing firm against intimidation? The answer depended on perspective, and that very ambiguity fueled endless discussion afterward. Another striking aspect of the confrontation was the environment in which it occurred. Airports symbolize movement, freedom, and transition. They are places where people leave behind the familiar and step into something new, whether it be for business, exploration, or personal reasons. To have a judge intervene and attempt to stop someone in that space almost seemed symbolic, as though an effort was being made to halt progress, to prevent forward movement, or to exert control over an individual seeking to move beyond boundaries. This symbolism was not lost on those who later reflected on the event. Crockett's resistance, therefore, took on the meaning of not just a personal refusal but also a representation of determination to move forward despite obstacles. The airport itself became part of the story, a backdrop that added layers of meaning to an already dramatic encounter. The buildup of tension during those moments also underscored how quickly ordinary situations can shift into defining events. What started as a routine day of travel turned into a confrontation that carried political, social, and personal implications. For Holloway, the act of stopping Crockett may have seemed necessary, justified, or even unavoidable. Yet the very attempt sparked discussions about overreach, timing, and appropriateness. For Crockett, standing firm was not just about resisting in the moment but also about sending a message that intimidation has limits, no matter where it comes from. The clash, therefore, transcended the individuals and became a narrative about larger principles, magnified by the eyes and ears of the public who witnessed it. Crockett's bold response and refusal to be intimidated at the airport created a powerful moment that resonated with everyone who witnessed it and later with those who heard the story through countless retellings and reports. When faced with Judge Holloway's attempt to block his way, Crockett did not falter, did not retreat, and did not show hesitation. Instead, he displayed a presence of mind and a level of courage that immediately shifted the balance of the confrontation. In settings where authority is usually assumed to dominate, Crockett's decision to stand his ground introduced an entirely different energy. It demonstrated that true strength often lies in composure, in the ability to face down a challenge without losing confidence, and in making a clear statement that intimidation will not succeed. His response was not only physical in terms of refusing to move back, but also psychological in the sense that he projected determination strong enough to rival the authority being exercised against him. The way Crockett handled the situation revealed layers of character that were both surprising and inspiring. He understood that the confrontation was not taking place in private but in front of an audience, and with that understanding, he knew that every gesture, every word, and every choice would carry meaning beyond that moment. By refusing to bow to pressure, he sent a message not only to Judge Holloway but to everyone watching that authority, no matter how official, could still be questioned and resisted when it stepped out of bounds. This boldness turned Crockett into more than just a figure caught in conflict, it elevated him into a symbol of resilience. People saw in him a reflection of their own struggles with power structures, and his defiance gave voice to the courage many wish to show when they feel cornered by circumstances or authority figures. The boldness of his response also revealed a mastery of situational awareness. Crockett knew that losing his composure or reacting with uncontrolled anger would only strengthen Holloway's position. Instead, he chose to respond in a manner that was both firm and controlled, ensuring that he did not fall into any traps that might have undermined his stance. This calculated resistance showed not only bravery but also intelligence, and it made his refusal to be intimidated even more impactful. Observers recognized this balance and were struck by how effectively Crockett managed to confront power without escalating the situation into chaos. His demeanor transformed the confrontation into a powerful statement about dignity, self-respect, and the limits of authority when confronted by unwavering determination. The scene also revealed the psychological dimensions of refusing intimidation. Fear is often the tool by which authority maintains control, and airports themselves are spaces where compliance is heavily emphasized. In such a setting, for Crockett to assert his independence and make it clear that he would not be pushed around was extraordinary. It showed that courage is not the absence of fear but the decision to act in spite of it. Crockett's refusal to be intimidated was contagious in its effect, as those around him who initially stood silent began to sense that they were witnessing something significant. The longer the standoff lasted, the clearer it became that Crockett's resistance was not just an individual act of defiance but a demonstration of how ordinary people could confront figures of authority without crumbling under pressure. There was also a symbolic weight to Crockett's bold response. Airports are gateways, places where journeys begin, and attempts to block movement in such a space can feel like efforts to limit progress or freedom. Crockett's refusal to stop became, in many eyes, a metaphor for persistence in the face of obstacles, for the human spirit's refusal to be grounded when it longs to move forward. The symbolism of standing tall in such a place amplified the meaning of his actions, making his resistance not just situational but emblematic of a larger principle. He was not only standing against Holloway in that moment, he was standing against every attempt to stifle determination, to halt progress, and to enforce compliance without justification. Public perception played a crucial role in shaping the narrative of this bold response. Those present who saw Crockett's refusal unfold firsthand began to discuss it almost immediately, and their stories carried an admiration that only grew once details reached the public through social media and other outlets. Some described the moment as empowering, while others spoke of it as a reminder of how courage could alter the dynamics of any confrontation. As the accounts spread, Crockett's actions began to be seen less as a reaction to one particular judge and more as an example of how individuals could challenge intimidation wherever it appeared. In this way, his boldness transcended the immediate context and became a story with universal appeal, inspiring discussions about power, resistance, and the importance of standing up for oneself. The emotional impact of his refusal was also undeniable. Witnesses described feeling a rush of adrenaline, sensing that they were part of an event that broke the ordinary rhythm of daily life. Crockett's ability to channel his emotions into focused resistance rather than uncontrolled defiance made the scene even more impressive. By keeping his composure, he allowed the courage of his stance to shine through without distraction. His calm strength in the face of confrontation was a lesson in how self-control can magnify boldness, turning what could have been a simple argument into a statement of principle. That emotional impact rippled through those who witnessed it and lingered long after, continuing to influence discussions and interpretations of what had happened. Another dimension of Crockett's refusal to be intimidated was the way it highlighted the vulnerability of authority itself. Judge Holloway entered the confrontation with the weight of official power behind him, yet in that moment, stripped of courtroom walls and legal protocols, the power was not absolute. Crockett's refusal exposed that authority relies on compliance, and when compliance is withdrawn, authority must face its own limits. This exposure was profound, as it revealed that courage could unsettle even the strongest figures of power. Crockett's resistance created a visible crack in the aura of untouchable authority, and that realization inspired many who later heard the story. Ultimately, the boldness of Crockett's response lay not just in the act of refusing but in the larger meaning it carried. His stance illustrated the principle that intimidation only works when accepted, and that individuals always hold the power to resist by standing firm in their convictions. His refusal turned the confrontation into more than a clash between two people. It became a demonstration of how resilience and courage could transform a moment of potential suppression into one of empowerment. His actions resonated because they reminded everyone that strength does not always come from titles, positions, or authority. It often comes from the simple, unyielding will of an individual who chooses not to be intimidated. The wider impact and public reaction to the dramatic encounter between Judge Holloway and Crockett at the airport extended far beyond the walls of the terminal and into conversations in homes, workplaces, and media outlets across the country. What began as a sudden confrontation witnessed by only a limited number of travelers quickly transformed into a widely discussed event once recordings, photos, and first-hand accounts spread across social platforms. In today's age of instant connectivity, an incident like this does not remain contained. It evolves into a shared experience, dissected from multiple angles, interpreted through different lenses, and debated in ways that reflect the larger societal climate. The confrontation became a symbol for some, a scandal for others, and a source of endless speculation for nearly everyone who encountered the story in some form. One of the most striking aspects of the public reaction was how quickly people took sides. On one hand, there were those who supported Judge Holloway, framing his attempt to stop Crockett as the rightful use of authority or at least a necessary act that must have had justifiable reasons. These voices tended to emphasize the role of judges as guardians of order and discipline, suggesting that Holloway must have known something crucial to intervene so directly. On the other hand, there was an equally strong wave of support for Crockett, celebrating his refusal to back down and casting him as a figure of defiance in the face of intimidation. For this group, Crockett represented the everyday person standing against the misuse of power, and his courage became a rallying point for conversations about fairness, accountability, and individual rights. The split in opinions reflected deeper divisions in society about authority, justice, and the role of individuals in challenging systems that seem unshakable. The media coverage only intensified these divisions. News outlets quickly recognized the drama and human interest embedded in the story, and they framed it in ways that captured audience attention. Some reports focused on Holloway's motives, speculating about what could have driven a respected judge to take such an unusual step. Others highlighted Crockett's bravery, turning him into a central figure in narratives about resilience and the courage to stand tall against authority. Opinion pieces soon followed, with commentators using the incident as a springboard to discuss broader issues such as the limits of judicial power, the nature of intimidation in modern society, and the importance of public resistance to overreach. The story grew larger than the event itself, becoming a lens through which people examined themes that had long been simmering in public consciousness. Social media, as expected, became a battlefield of interpretation. Hashtags related to the incident trended for days, drawing in users from around the world who debated, analyzed, and even created memes to capture their reactions. Some posts replayed the confrontation moment by moment, while others extracted still images to highlight Crockett's defiant posture or Holloway's assertive stance. The story took on a life of its own, shaped not just by the facts but by the endless commentary layered over it. In this digital environment, Crockett was celebrated as a hero by many, while Holloway was scrutinized and criticized in ways that likely went far beyond what he anticipated when stepping into that airport terminal. The viral nature of the incident ensured that the impact reached far wider than anyone present at the scene could have imagined. The public reaction also revealed the hunger people have for stories that capture the clash between authority and resistance. In a world where many feel overwhelmed by structures of power, seeing someone refuse to be intimidated resonated deeply. Crockett's stance tapped into collective emotions, giving people an outlet to express their own frustrations with authority figures in their lives. For some, it became a story of hope, a reminder that even the most powerful can be challenged by courage. For others, it became a cautionary tale about the fragility of authority. When taken out of its traditional context, this duality kept the story alive in public discourse, as people projected their own interpretations and values onto the event. Another important dimension of the wider impact was the way the confrontation entered cultural conversations. Late-night shows, podcasts, and radio discussions all found ways to comment on it, often using humor to highlight the absurdity of the situation while still acknowledging the seriousness of what it revealed. Public figures weighed in as well, with some offering support to Crockett while others defended Holloway's reputation. This layering of voices ensured that the incident could not simply fade into the background but instead became a point of reference in larger cultural debates about authority, power dynamics, and the courage to resist. The incident also influenced how institutions were perceived. The judiciary, usually regarded as an untouchable pillar of authority, suddenly found itself under the spotlight in an unusual way. If a judge could act so aggressively outside of a courtroom, people began to wonder about the balance of power inside the courtroom itself. This erosion of unquestioned respect for authority figures reflected a growing skepticism in society, and the airport confrontation provided a vivid example that fueled those doubts. Crockett's refusal to be intimidated was not just about his personal resilience, it became a story that shook people's perceptions of where the boundaries of authority truly lie. For Crockett personally, the wider impact was transformative. He became a symbol of defiance almost overnight, his name and image circulating far beyond what he might have expected. This kind of sudden visibility can be both empowering and overwhelming, as it brings admiration from supporters but also scrutiny from critics. People began to associate him with the values of courage, independence, and resilience, and his actions were analyzed as though they carried intentional messages to society. Even those who had never met him now saw him as someone who represented their own struggles with intimidation, turning his personal act of resistance into a collective narrative. On a deeper level, the wider public reaction to the confrontation highlighted the storytelling nature of human society. The facts of what happened at the airport could be summarized in minutes, yet the interpretations, debates, and symbolic meanings stretched for weeks. People are drawn to stories that embody conflict, courage, and the testing of limits, and the Holloway-Crockett encounter delivered all of these elements in a way that was both real and relatable. The drama of the moment was magnified not just because it happened but because it spoke to something larger within human experience: the constant negotiation between power and resistance, authority and independence, intimidation and defiance. As the days passed and the immediate buzz began to settle, the impact of the confrontation lingered in subtle ways. It influenced how people viewed authority figures in public spaces, how they thought about their own capacity to resist, and how they talked about the balance of power in society. The airport encounter was no longer just a dramatic event between two individuals, it had become a reference point, a story retold as an